as you grow older, the only thing that you get left with is memories, and memories actually last longer than whatever is happening in your life. And I don't even think I had actually met an auditor before I started studying what I studied at UJ. I think the things that came naturally to me were more, either being a teacher or running a business, because that's what my parents did.
Where does today come before yesterday? Where does today come before yesterday?
What day is it today? So this month is about going back to basics and saying, what is the definition of an internal audit? And you don't use the definition as it's sitting in the standards, but make it very simplistic.
Welcome to INbrief, the podcast for internal auditors. Today with me, I have Lusanda Ncoliwe, our seasoned board member. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you're also well.
I am well. I want you to be well. In fact, let's start like this. Maybe to make the environment very relaxed, let's start with the icebreakers. Let's break this ice, literally. Do you listen to music?
Yes, I do. I think everybody listens to music as a way to soothe yourself.
Yes.
My music taste, though, is, however, very old. I don't think I listened to anything which was done in the past 10 years. All the music I listen is literally over 10 years old.
So what song were you listening to when you were driving here? That funny.
Oh, my word. I don't remember. Must have been Chris Brown. And it's like a 12-year-old song and some R&B as well. But what I remember about the trip here is that me and my colleague, as we came, both the music was reminding us of Sunday mornings with our parents. That's where we got the music. It's not really music that we chose for ourselves, but it's music that just reminds us of a relaxed Sunday. So.
Oh, I get that. That Metro FM relaxed Sunday type of music.
Yes, R&B and jazz. So it was a mixture of R&B and jazz. So.
Okay. I thought maybe you were listening to Ciara,
No, I don't even know what Ciara sings, but that's just me.
Oh, I'm a piano,
Oh, most definitely not. So I only have to endure amapiano when it's school holidays and the kids, nieces and nephews are around. I don't even know what they are singing, but I just have to sort of listen.
The most important is being accommodative of them. So
yeah,
doesn't
yes.
matter if you like it or not, So as long as you are accommodating.
No, definitely. I think over the time you end up actually getting the beat yourself.
Yeah.
Because they play the music over and over. But if you just remember being a teenager as well, you would remember that whatever music you were playing over and over. So your parents had to listen to it. So I'm at that stage where I literally have to listen over and over to the latest songs.
Second question. Tell us about the moment. It can be a day or any moment that if possible, you could rewind and relive it right at this time.
Oh, geez.
Anything, a moment or a day that was perfect, that perfection?
I would say an era.
Yeah.
I think my teenage years were an era that I would like to relive. And when I was a teenager, I didn't think they were the best times.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older, I look back into my teenage life and I think it was actually a perfect life as a teenager. And that was because I grew up in a family where, our parents really, really took it seriously on balancing our lives. Going to school, when it's holiday, make sure that we have the best holiday ever. Of course, as a youngster, you think they are just too much because they want you to go on holiday with them. But now that I'm old, I really appreciate having parents who balance your life. having parents who really make an effort to make memories. Because as you grow older, the only thing that you get left with is memories, and memories actually last longer than whatever is happening in your life. And yeah, so I really think my teenage life was a good upbringing. Now that I'm older, of course, it's probably just reflecting now, but then I just thought they were just too much.
You're talking about your teenagehood. Tell me, what was your dream job as a teenager? And then break it down to you being now an adult and your whole experience. So telling me about yourself from your dream job. Probably were you dreaming of being an auditor, or you were dreaming of being a doctor as a teenager, and then telling us now about yourself now as an adult.
Sure. So growing up, I don't even think I knew what an auditor was. I was born in a village in the Eastern Cape, and I don't even think I had actually met an auditor before I started studying what I studied at UJ. I think the things that came naturally to me were more, either being a teacher or running a business, because that's what my parents did. Both of them were teachers, and my dad turned out to be an entrepreneur. So he had a lot of businesses that he ran in my lifetime. So I really looked out to that side, of being an entrepreneur. So I've always thought in my mind I would be, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think the bug, which is commerce, accounting, auditing, only hit me. I must have been in grade 11, and we had universities come to our school, and they were telling us about, not even about internal audit specifically, they were telling us about the CA route, finance, BCom, etc. And I think that's how the bug hit me. And shockingly enough, when I first came to university, that's not what I studied. I studied engineering in my first year. And that was because if I look at my subjects in high school, I had a mixture of sciences and commerce. So I did have the choice, right? And I took engineering because, I really found it fascinating. And I was running away from just how much effort that I thought accounting had. If I look back in my high school years, the one subject which had the most homework was accounting. I was like, this is not going to work for me.
Balancing the child balance.
Yes, yeah. But I did get a very rude awakening as a first year engineering student. You spend a lot of time in the lab, actually designing stuff. And so I was doing electrical engineering, electronics to be specific. And after a year, I knew this was not going to be for me. I went back to accounting, which I actually was quite good at. I just was running away from the load of work, which is the funny thing. To choose the whole career from running away from the load of work. It is quite funny now. But then, you're a 19-year-old. You just want to be able to balance being university and also having a bit of fun. So I think that was the choice.
So you are saying, which university did you go to?
So I studied in UJ. This is where I got my undergraduate. So both my first year of engineering was in UJ, and subsequently moving to BCom accounting in UJ as well.
Okay. Did you now enjoy accounting, to say, because you say in your first year as an engineer student, you were not happy to be stuck in a lab. Did you enjoy it? And then now proceeding to your career as an auditor?
I must say that if I look back in my life, let's say high school, matric, etc., right? Even though accounting, I found it to be tedious because of just how much you needed to do. I mean, there's a lot to do, balancing the trial balance, etc., etc. I was good at it. There was a lot of work, but I was good at it, right? So when I changed back to BCom, there was a lot of work, but I was actually, naturally good at it, especially auditing. I think most people I studied with found auditing extremely difficult because it's got a specific terminology that you need to use when you're an auditor. For me, it made more logic. And as a matter of fact, if I look back, while everyone around me was really struggling with auditing, it was the one subject that I had never failed ever until my honors year. And I think that's what led me to actually be an internal auditor. I currently work for one of the big 4 firms. I'm a partner in internal audit there. And this is how I got there, because at some point I realized that this is what I'm really good at. And that's how I followed this route. I started off doing external audit. I started and finished my articles. And I think I stumbled onto internal audit because the firm that I was working for had all sorts of departments, internal audit, external, deals, etc., etc. And one year I was just seconded to internal audit, and I would say the rest is history because I never came back. I found it quite fascinating.
Interesting. So you're saying that you stumbled upon being an internal auditor. If you could turn back the hands of time, would you still take the decisions that you took years ago? In one of the decisions is being an internal auditor. So looking back, would you still want to be an internal auditor, or you would, if you had an opportunity, change careers?
I would most certainly not change careers. In fact, now that I'm older, I think my route, even though it didn't go straight, it was perfect. Everything that I learned in younger years taught me something for the future. So if I think back about my year as an engineer, I got to sit as a CAE or head of internal audit for 4 years in a company with a lot of engineers. Now, human beings generally relate with people who can speak to their terminology. So just that 1 year of engineering helped me to be able to relate to this particular company, and the engineers were a little bit easier on me, right? And if I look back in the 3 years that I spent in external audit, I think it was also a good base in my internal audit life, because if you think about internal audit, you get to audit every aspect of a business. Yeah. Because I had spent 3 years as an external auditor, it means that if I come across numbers when I'm auditing, I don't run away and say, oh, I'm not going to touch this. I understand them well. I got a good base on numbers. I got a good base on what a trial balance looks like, etc., etc. And ending up in internal audit for me was the perfect end, because when I look back, I was generally always strong in auditing generally, and being an internal auditor now mixed, the idea of understanding businesses on a deeper level, and my skills as an internal auditor. So I think it's actually the perfect place to be, actually, and the journey that I've taken to get here has just helped me to propel me to where I am.
So you are the board deputy chairperson. We need to mention that. Ladies and gentlemen, she is a seasoned board member, currently the deputy chairperson of the Institute of Internal Auditors Board. I had to mention that. Give you your flowers whilst you're still alive, you know?
Thank you.
So tell me about your experience as a board member. I know right now, this is not your first time being a board member. Tell me about your experience and what looking back, not currently, but in your past experience as a board member of this Institute of Internal Auditors.
Sure.
What could you have done differently that you will implement now?
So I think, being a board member, it's just one of those very big roles in terms of anybody, whether it's the institute or any company where you are a board member, because you are given the fiduciary duties to make decisions on behalf of that particular entity. And I think that's quite important to say, whatever decisions you make, you're forever thinking, how am I making the best decision, for example, for the institute, right? And I think if I look at my experience in the institute itself now, it is now my 4th year in the institute. I started as a board member at the end of 2020. Yes. And there is a lot of things that we've experienced. And I think the biggest one for me is the importance of getting your stakeholder management, well, right? And it's not because of any other thing, but it's because if you want the best out of any institutions, I believe that you need to really take your time in understanding, who are the biggest stakeholders, right? And making sure that whatever you do, you've taken into account all the stakeholders. I mean, if you can think of something like the Institute, it's a member-based organization, right? Those are the biggest stakeholders, You think of the members sitting out there in the Eastern Cape and say, what exactly do they want from the Institute? What kind of support do they want from us? Secondly, we've got, employers of the people who practice internal audit, so audit firms and other institutions, those are stakeholders as well. And we think to ourselves, if I was an employer of 100 people, for example, what is it that I'm looking for from the Institute? What guidance, what support, et cetera, right? And last but not least, the element where you are growing the profession itself. You're saying, if I start as a practitioner today, right, what am I working towards? I'm working towards being a certified internal auditor. I'm working towards being a CAE. I'm working towards this and that. And those are the kind of dynamics as board members who always have to have in mind to say, these stakeholders and taking care of their needs is what is going to actually push the Institute higher and higher, not just in South Africa, but globally as an institute.
Okay. I'm going to pause the thought about the certification because I also want us to dwell into that, considering that it's important for auditors to also have the educational background, not only the experience. But I'd like to, one thing that is on everybody's mind as an internal audit practitioner is the new standard. So the new standard was launched in January this year, and it will be implemented next year, Jan. And it's in everybody's mind. It's very important that everybody implements the standard. What important things came out of the new standard as compared to the old one?
Sure. So I think for those who haven't seen a copy of the new standards, it's a total of 120 pages, in case you're wondering.
I know the Code of Ethics, your IPPS is in one document.
Correct,
So it's not the whole.
Yeah, so the current standards are about 120 pages, but I've had the privilege of, in the past 2 months, going through the standards to summarize for CAEs around Johannesburg, where we engage them. And I came out with about 5 things that I thought were really, really quite important and highlighted in the new standards. First and foremost is what we call the internal audit mandate, that I think CAEs have to really take cognizance of. The second element is about the internal audit strategy. The new standards really highlight in terms of making sure that in each and every internal audit function has got a strategy. And it's not a matter of now everybody has to have one. I mean, I have to note that the new standards have changed even in the tone of the language. If I think about the 2017 standards, there was a lot of sort of gray area. The language itself has changed very much in the new standards right now, and it uses must more than may. If I think of the third element, which is quite important that came out, is about the board oversight. So it clarifies now what is required from the board in terms of the internal audit function or the audit committee if it's been delegated to the audit committee itself. The fourth element that I would really like to highlight is about integrated assurance. As you know, as internal auditors, we really have a big belief in making sure that we've got a well-rounded assurance or what we call combined assurance. So these standards delve into how to practically make sure that any entity that you work in, the concept of integrated assurance is done. Last but not least, but very important, I think one of the most important elements is talking about technology and internal auditors. And that element really talks about how we as internal auditors make sure that we are not left behind by technology but also how do we make sure that we are very efficient using technology. So those 5 elements really, I would say, are the 5 elements that I've picked up from the new standards. But all in all, if I look at the new standards themselves, we've summarized them there. They are sitting with 5 domains. They've got 52 principles. So there's a lot to read there. It's quite interesting, and I really look forward to us as internal auditors getting to know what the new standards talk about. I certainly believe that they enhance our work as internal auditors, and we're really looking forward to really getting our hands dirty with those.
Yes. So on the getting our hands dirty, I'm an internal auditor. I'm sitting with my CAE. We have this big document.
Sure.
I'm very confused, overwhelmed, maybe not too confused, maybe overwhelmed. How would you advise us as the internal audit practitioners on going about to get ready for the standard for next year, considering that it's almost 6 months left?
Sure.
Counting out December, because December, South Africa and December is the
Sure.
So how should I be? What should I be doing as an internal auditor to get ready?
Yeah. So I think the most fundamental thing for 2024 for practitioners and for CAEs in particular is that there will be a lot of internal audit functions who are looking to get their quality assurance reviews this year. And the reason for that is that a change in standard means that the measurement that is being used for your QAR is going to be different from next year. So what one would like to do, you've got about 3 things that you really, really want to focus on. One, you would want to focus to say, whatever I've been doing since 2017, let me make sure that I've got a QAR that tells me whether or not I was conforming or not, because that conformance, the cycle is about 5 years for external QAR. So you wanna have that done before January next year. Number 2, if you are one of those people who have got a relatively new QAR or you want to look forward, the other thing that you would want to do is to see if you can do a gap analysis to say, I already know the standards now, but I'm looking forward to these standards which are going to be effective next year.
Yeah.
I would like to do a gap analysis. So if I get a report now in June, gap analysis usually come with a plan to say, here's a plan to get me to where I want to be. So, people who want to be, looking forward and you want to be a few steps ahead of everybody, they will be looking to do gap analysis, and they will use the outcomes of that gap analysis as a plan that they follow, so that by the time the standards are effective from the 1st of January, they are already ready for the standards. They don't want to get to 1st of January and only then are they scrambling to try and understand the standards. Last but not least, I would encourage all CAEs to really get all the departments involved in the understanding of the standards.
Departments meaning the whole organization?
No, just the internal audit function.
Okay.
Because remember, as a practitioner, the standards talk to you as a practitioner, right? And you don't want to be the CAE alone who understands the standards, right?
True.
You want, if there's 40 of you, you want everybody to get onto the wagon, right?
And implement.
Yes, yeah, and understand them, so that once you are implementing, etc., everybody understands the standards. So I would say, for CAEs is to really find ways in which you get everybody to get onto the wagon of understanding that, guys, we are having standards that are changing. Let us identify, where the changes are, etc. If you look at the domains themselves, there's different places where people could focus, for example, because if you're a CAE, there's a governance domain, which is particularly talking about your relationship with the board, with the audit com, etc. But if let's say you're a first year or second year trainee, there's actually domains that talks about the practical auditing steps, etc. So there is a place for everybody to concentrate in terms of where do they concentrate and get, and just make it, fun, and make sure that everybody really is looking interesting. to really understand the standards. I, for one, have started doing that. We've got a team of about 120 people where I work for internal audit. And on the 1st of March, we had a IIA, global IIA standards quiz, and what other way to get everybody excited but to just have competition and say, let the best man win. And I think that start was to really facilitate everybody to actually know the standards, because you're not going to do well in the quiz if you don't know what the standards are talking about.
Oh, I love that. And I love the fact that you're saying you're making the internal auditors interested in the standard.
Correct, yeah.
Now there is a leg in the standard that talks about technology, which you have also mentioned, the whole innovation. Business is moving very fast in terms of technology. But internal auditors now, in an ideal situation, we should be moving quickly with the business. But internal auditors have been left behind. What you as a board member of the institute now, not as a practitioner, how would you encourage internal auditors to embrace technology?
Sure. So I think as the IIA SA Institute and the board ourselves, we have been really putting an effort in really making sure that practitioners give attention to technology.
Yes.
For those who are in the 2023 annual conference, IIA annual conference, there was specific slots just to talk about that. But what I would like to say is that for all the internal audit functions, you need to start somewhere in terms of your understanding of data. I think, everyone, when you say technology, they think about something big, something complicated, etc., but that's not the case. Because we carry phones with us all the time. We have all sorts of data with us, but we don't put those things together to say it's not a scary concept, right? To start off, to be able to make sure that you keep up to date, etc., I think about 90% of internal auditors have used Excel before.
Yes.
And Excel is the most
not 100%.
Exactly. It might even be 100%, right? Excel is actually the simplest form of data analysis. Before you even go to a tool, just Excel alone. Yeah. So you start somewhere by saying, if I'm working at an institution that is a bank, right? You ask yourself the question, the data that we use at the bank, where is it? Is it sitting in a pile of paper? Is it sitting in a system? Is it sitting on Excel, etc., That's how you start the process, right? And then from there, you find ways in which you can make the data to be digestible, right? And that making that data digestible is to say, if we know that we get the data in this frequency, how are we going to make sure as internal auditors we are able to make sense of the data? Because the important thing about data is not just the size, it's it making sense to us and it making sense to the people who make the decisions. Now, as the institute ourselves, we have through our conferences, through our trainings, made sure that data analysis and use of technology to be more efficient is something that's been a front line. We have a lot of trainings as well through the Leadership Academy as well that really encourages this phenomenon. And it's not going to slow down, it's actually going to get faster. And therefore, internal auditors of the future should be technology enabled. We have also seen through our subcommittees, which are the exam committee, etc., that the universities themselves are also embracing this to say the internal auditors of the future need to understand technology and how to incorporate technology into the work that we do.
Okay. Now, as a practitioner, you're wearing two hats, so you will have to keep on exchanging this.
Yes, yeah.
Now, as a practitioner, what advice would you give your own internal auditor?
Sure.
I am there as an internal auditor, 2 years experience. Now, I have no clue about technology. All I know is texting on WhatsApp.
Correct.
How would you influence me to embrace technology?
Sure. I think the biggest thing about technology and making sense of data, right, is that human beings are very visual, right?
Yes.
And so some of the things that we use in our practice to make sure that everyone is interested in technology and analysis of data is to be able to use virtual imaging to be able to show whatever data that we ingest in a very virtual way. I mean, in a very visual way, right? And I think that has really gotten everyone interested, including the generation we call AMA 2000, because they really believe in seeing something before you can talk about theoretical data, etc., etc. I think that's the first part. The second part really is the element of curiosity, right? And that curiosity is about every time you deal with information, right? Try and see if you can find patterns in information, right? And once you have that curiosity mind, you will be very interested in analyzing data, in able to even organize data to be able to show trends to the people that you work with. There's nothing more exciting than writing a report and telling someone who's a decision maker who has been dealing with this data the whole year and showing them to say, actually, this is what the trend tells us about your data. You know, it tells us that the average person is spending this much money. It tells us that the average person is suffering from this particular sickness, whatever the case might be. But the most important thing is that you must be able to make sense of any data that you see and keep the curious mind as an internal auditor. And I think you win just from there.
Let's pause this thought. Let's play a game.
A game? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Remember that we are also trying to accommodate those young ones.
Okay,
You know?
okay.
So it's not only about us. So
All right.
let's play a game. It's a riddle.
Okay, a riddle. Okay.
I know. Where does today come before yesterday?
Huh?
Where does today come before yesterday?
Jeez. Oh, my Lord. Where does today come?
Before yesterday.
What day is it today?
You are overthinking it. You are such an internal
Okay,
auditor.
yesterday, I don't know.
You are such an internal auditor. Don't overthink it. Okay, I'll give you an answer.
Okay.
For this one only, dictionary. So the answer is dictionary.
Oh, Mama.
You got it. You see how you...
Oh, wait. Oh, jeez. I'm thinking of the week. Sorry. Okay.
Last one. What has keys but can't open a single lock?
The piano keys?
Yes.
At least I got 50%.
I'll say 100%. I'll forgive you for the incorrect answer. Yeah. I
Okay.
just wanted us to, you know, the standard is a very,
Heavy.
it's a
Yeah.
heavy, especially
Okay.
now it's like, it's in everybody's vocabulary. If you are an internal audit practitioner,
Sure.
you need to be thinking about it. Now, going back to this,
Okay.
we talked about the new standard, right? And the awareness on particularly the new standard, taking into account that it will come into effect next year, Jan. This month is May. It's the Internal Audit Awareness Month, International Internal Audit Awareness Month, where also we want to make our partners, we want them to make them aware about internal audit. Please tell us what this month is about and what would you do differently now compared to what you've done before to make us aware of internal audit?
Sure. So I think So I think the month of May is a fundamentally important month for internal auditors. And I really wish that as South Africans or the South African chapter and practitioners in South Africa really recognize it as much as is recognized around the world, right? But I think the fundamental, though, is to try and make the person on the street understand what is we do as internal auditors. And the reason for that is that if you ask 10 people on the street about internal audit, I think only about 2 of them will understand the fundamentals of internal audit, if you are lucky. And that translates into the clients that we service, or even if you're an in-house internal auditor, the rest of the business, right? Because if someone doesn't know why you exist in the first place, right? It becomes very difficult for them to give you their time. It becomes very difficult for them to give you their support, etc., etc. So this month is about going back to basics and saying, what is the definition of an internal audit? And you don't use the definition as it's sitting in the standards, but make it very simplistic, right? And there's a very simple definition that I try to explain to people, and say, if you think about any business that is trying to achieve a certain objective, right? Internal controls help management to be able to achieve that objective. Now, let's make it in simpler terms, right? If your objective is to fill a 100-liter container, right?
Yes.
If your internal controls are working, you will just do 10 trips if you've got a 10-liter bucket.
Yes.
Only 10 trips and nothing else. But imagine that this 10-liter bucket of yours had holes, and that means that your controls are not working.
Yes.
Can you see that it will take you twice as much effort just to reach the same goal? So that's what internal audit is in a nutshell. Every company out there is trying to get a certain objective. But the fundamental thing to know is that if your internal control environment is not good, it will take you more effort to get there. So it is important that you get your internal audit environment to work well, so that you are so much more efficient in getting to your objective. So that's the simplest way I can explain it.
I'm actually sold on that explanation. Not as an internal audit practitioner, but I'm trying to step outside. Now, I am internal audit practitioner now.
Correct.
I'm in a celebratory mode. I need to wear my hat, and be in a celebratory mode and celebrate this month,
Correct, yeah.
Even if it's not a party, how would you celebrate this month? Not being our typical internal auditors in navy blue and white suits, what would you recommend other practitioners to do to celebrate this month? I can be in a party mode, you can tell them they can wear their hats,
Look, I think as part of the Awareness Month or Celebratory Month, one of the things that I think is fundamental is to spend time with, our younger selves. And when I say younger selves is, spend time at a university near you, just give them an understanding of what you do and spend time with them. I think that is a very good way in which to give someone awareness and also celebrate with them, all right? And secondly as well, if I think about now, not just universities, I think about high school as well. I think spending time in high schools as well would really, really make a big difference. And the reason I say that is that, remember at the beginning I said, when I was still in high school or I was still in my village, I didn't know anything about auditors. I didn't even know what an auditor was, right? But imagine now sitting in high school in some small village somewhere and having people just spending the day with you, just explaining what they do and also showing, most people learn by seeing, they see people who have done well, who are successful, to say, you can take this career, this is where it will take you, right? I think it's a nice way. And the reason I still think it's a celebration is that when you go to a high school, when you go to a university, you're not necessarily wearing a suit and, and very formal, but you are trying to make people really relate to what's possible, right? By going to, high school, university, etc., etc. Last but not least, I don't think, people see this as valuable, but I particularly see it as valuable. To say, as practitioners, we need to find reasons to meet each other. Currently, South Africa chapter has just celebrated just this week, meeting the 8,500 mark of members. So imagine that in this month, we also make an effort to meet other practitioners and sort of share, very light-heartedly, things that we've experienced, things that are common, etc., etc. I mean, it's part of the party or celebration mood.
Yes, I love that. So you mentioned, one thing you mentioned, it's going to universities and students, considering that we have a program called SAkula. SAkula is a program for students. It's free, so if you are a student, you can join also the Institute and Internal Auditor and be a member. And you don't have to pay a cent. That's
correct. Yeah.
Very, when you're a student, it's very important to. I would spare every cent, and if I have to evaluate between food and membership, I'll choose food. But this time, you don't have to choose. You can actually have both worlds.
Correct.
Now, as a student, I am there so demotivated about internal audit. I have failed. You've mentioned that you failed your honors. I am that student right there and then that has failed internal audit as my core subject. How would you motivate that particular student in your awareness of internal audit?
Yeah, so I think if I think about, being in university, right? I think most students take everything that happens to them as final, right? Yeah. And it always sounds like it's the end of the world, right? But it's not, right? The one thing that motivated me as a student was seeing someone who has gotten over the line or over the hill that I'm trying to get over, right? So if I see someone who's a young person but who's already practicing as a trainee, for example, who's a second-year trainee in a successful audit firm, that would motivate me, right?
Yes.
If I see someone who's a manager internal audit and they recant their story of how they got there, that motivates me, right? So I think when you're a student, it's quite important that we model for them that this is what you are going towards. And when we are modeling, we must not sugarcoat how difficult it is to get there.
Yes.
But the message that we need to be sharing with them is that it can be done. Mm-hmm. And it's not just done by, people who were born in Sandton. It can actually be done by someone who was born wherever you were born, So, people really relate to people who are similar to them, right?
True.
So I think to motivate students then is to really make sure that we have people from different walks of life who show them that this is possible. So when we visit the universities in SAkula, I think it's quite important to have those kind of people, to talk to the students and also have a balance between it's difficult right now, but it's possible.
True. And I like the fact that even you said you are from the Eastern Cape.
Sure.
And you are a girl, that young girl from Eastern Cape, now in Joburg, a partner in one of the big four firms. So I think you yourself are modeling that to our students, that it's actually possible. That whole failing of your year, you can fail your honors or you can fail your first year, but all you have to do is get up and dust yourself. Now, you talked also about internal audit practitioners, right? You work for one of the big four firms. Now, in the past weeks, there has been a scandal on one of the big fours where somebody, a bursary specialist, stole from from the audit firm. The question is, who has the guts, the liver to steal from an audit firm? But that's okay. He had the guts, he stole. So that question actually is not as relevant now. Now you are meeting a client and they tell you that they don't trust you as an internal auditor because you are failing to implement controls in your very same house. How would you convince them that actually internal audit is working? So as part of an awareness, how would you convince them that actually, yes, it was a little oversight, maybe not 16 million can be a little oversight, but we will just ignore that. But how do you convince now your practitioners that actually audit is not as complacent as you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as internal auditors, we strive to be trusted advisor, yes. Right? Yes. If you look at the maturity levels of internal audit in general, I think every internal auditor and every internal audit function really strives to be a trusted advisor. Now, to be able to have someone trust you for anything, for advice or anything, I think it's a long process, and that process entails the ability to do what you say you're gonna do. I think that's purely it, right? Yeah. To say for someone to be able to trust you over anything, you must be able to keep your word. In terms of always keeping to what you said you're going to do, right? And you would see that as practitioners ourselves, one of the things that we do is that before you do any service, etc., whether you are an in-house or whether you are servicing as an audit firm, that you will have a scope letter that says, I will do A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
And I think the most important thing is that always have that in mind. And that in mind is to say, always go back. What did I promise? What did I promise the client? What did I promise the client? And that's how you build the trust. And by the way, trust is not built over one project, over one night, etc., etc. It is important that you are consistent in the results. You are consistent in what you do. You are consistent in making sure that should anything go outside of what you had agreed for, you are the first person to communicate, to say, I said I was going to give you a report on Friday. It's now 4 o'clock on Friday. I don't think I'll be able to give it to you today. I would like to request that I give it to you on the Monday. It is quite important, very, very important, because the profession itself of auditors, we stand on a code of ethics that demands us to be ethical, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, it is quite important that we always have that in mind. And to become trusted advisors, we build every day by doing what we say we're going to do.
And including doing it in our house too.
Correct.
So I have an employer, ABC employer. They have a post for CAE Chief Audit Executive.
Correct.
So in South Africa, most of these positions are advertised, and one of the minimum requirement would be to be a CASA.
Correct.
And we were talking about, you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned CIA, Certified Internal Auditor. Now you are sitting with that employer. You have to convince them that actually for an internal audit role, a CIA is more preferred versus a CA. Considering that in South Africa, CA is more older, how would you actually convince them? Market the CIA, actually convincing them that actually for that particular position, you are in a better position to hire a CIA instead of a CA. How would convince us? I know.
So that's an interesting one. And the fundamentals of this argument are, let's see, argument that has been going on for years. And I think if I look at internal audit in South Africa, in Africa, and the rest of the world, there are different fundamentals that we come across. I'll start off with, experiencing someone who had worked in the US for 18 years, right? They have gotten it right? And they understand that they hire for the specification that they are looking for. So they know that if I'm looking for this, I hire a CFE. If I'm looking for this, I hire a CIA. If I'm looking for this, a CA. So they're already there, right? But what is the problem statement in South Africa, right? The problem statement is about marketing the professions individually, right? I think I did tell you that as someone who grew up in the Eastern Cape in the 80s, right? The only thing that we knew about, there was very, I would say, limited, right? You knew about a teacher, a nurse, a policeman.
The police, yes.
In commerce, you only knew about the CA route and so forth, right? But over time, if you look from the 90s onwards and the history of South Africa, suddenly the most of the population of South Africa started understanding that there is more to commerce than CA. They are tax practitioners, they are internal auditors, and then there are people who are in finance routes, which is the CA route, right? I think the fundamental thing that I would say is that the CIA certification is the most recognized certification for internal audit work, not just in South Africa, all over the world. We as South African CIA practitioners or CIA certified, we are recognized anywhere in the world. We write the same exam, which means that the standard of our certification itself is in the standard of the rest of the chapters in the world. I think that's the most fundamental thing. The second thing really goes back to stakeholder management, right? And stakeholder management also adds the people who buy your service, right? And the people who buy your service are the entity now who wants to hire a head of internal audit, and them knowing what is the role of a CAE, what is the role of a chief audit executive. Because once we get to a point where everybody understands what their role is, then it's easier for you to actually explain to them, to say, someone who's a chief audit executive, the most recognized certification for that person is CIA. We still have a road to go in South Africa, because if you think about it, it's not just CIAs who were, we were suffering with this. People who were specializing, for example, in cost accounting. There's a specific certification for that, right? But I think it's a matter of time, and it's a matter of the institute itself marketing what we do. Secondly, the practitioners themselves, making sure that the people that we give service to know exactly that what we are doing as internal audit practitioners. And I think over time, this will be remedied. It has definitely improved from, I would say, the 90s till now, but there's still a long way to go. And I still reiterate the fact that the CIA certification, it's still the most recognized certification for internal audit practitioners, not just in South Africa, worldwide.
So I would like you to please look into your camera. I am an internal auditor back at home. I am thinking, should I write CIA? Should I not write CIA? So I'm at that crossroad. Please convince me as an internal audit practitioner, not just the head, to actually write the CIA.
Correct, yeah. So I just want to say that as an internal audit practitioner, you really need to make sure that you understand the fundamentals of being an internal auditor. and go back to basics, and go back to even the definition I was telling you about an internal auditor, and first know what an internal auditor is required to do. Once you know what an internal auditor is required to do, I think the next best thing is to say, if I am doing a certain job, I'm an internal auditor, what is the highest recognition that an internal auditor has? And the highest recognition as an internal audit practitioner is the CIA certification. And therefore, just like in all careers in the world, to be recognized as a neurosurgeon, you need to write the exam itself. We need to do the same thing as internal auditors, to say, to be a recognized internal auditor, I need to write the CIA certification. The certification itself currently has 3 board exams, and those board exams actually test you on fundamentals that an internal auditor is required to do. So I do encourage each and every person who's interested in being an internal audit practitioner at the top of their career to really go out there and do CIA. I can guarantee you now that once you get your CIA certification, even the step on your walk changes, because you've got confidence to say, I am certified not just in South Africa, all over the world, that I know what I'm doing. So go out there and get CIA.
Thank you. One last game before closing. I know.
How dangerous is this game now?
I know. Last game, or should I do you? Okay, let me give you a choice. Do you want the game or do you want the question? So just that.
I'm scared of the games, but let's take a game. I know you say we are uptight. Let me take a risk.
We have to actually show others that
I'm gonna take a risk. I'm gonna take a risk.
Who has married many women but was never married?
Jesus?
No.
Well, I mean, the Bible says he's a husband to those who are unmarried, so he's okay.
You are such an auditor.
I'm from Easter, so that's why the first thing that came to mind.
Makes sense. Yeah. You are funny. You have a sense of humor. Okay, it's a priest.
Oh, married many men, but he's never married.
Yeah. Now, question.
Okay.
I think the producer is saying our time is up.
Oh, okay.
It was fun interviewing you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting down. And it's important for the stakeholders to see their board members, to know their board members and to know what they're about. And thank you for actually taking your time to come and join me.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. As you can see, I quite enjoy speaking about this.
Yes, very passionate. Your eyes,
and I'm very passionate about it.
Yes.
So I hope everybody enjoys the episode.
No, they will definitely do.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Lusanda for joining us and for spending time with us. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I have a few announcements. We have a public sector conference coming up on the 9th and the 10th of May, which is at the Emperor's Palace. We also have the Young Leaders Network, that's SAkula that we were talking about, that is on the 6th of September of this year. Please go to the IIASA.org.za website so that you will be able to view any events that are coming up. And thank you for watching.